Okay,
share.
okay.
So now we have another very eminent endocrinologist. You can see him everywhere in every conference, Dr. Krishna Seshadri from Chennai. He is Associate Professor of Medicine and Endocrinology, Ramchandran Medical College, Chennai. He is Head of Department of Endocrinology in the same institute, Vice President of the same institute. Over to Dr. Krishna Seshadri. Dr. J.J. Mukherjee ने तो अपने आप ही तालियां बजा ली. Let us see what Krishna Seshadri wants to do, what Dr. J.J. Mukherjee has said on it. Over to you, Dr. Krishna.
Thank you very much. One second, please. So for those of you who haven't looked outside, there's an eclipse that's going on. And can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. You are audible. You are audible.
And I think, you know, it's very interesting that we are doing this talk while an eclipse is going on, and maybe it's an eclipse of the word CVOT. The question, please understand my conflicts of interest. The interesting thing is that the word CVOT is a much later construct than the 2008 document. The premise for the CV safety drive was based, of course, on the listening of the rosiglitazone data, particularly two badly done meta-analysis that were loaded in favor of harm. Irrespective, this is what happened. The word CVOT is not even part of the 2008 directive. Let's move on quickly. They have what have they been useful for? One is all the safety of the new drugs have been tested. This is one part. We have looked at unanticipated safety signals, and we have found out some issues about the prevention of CV events, heart failure, limiting CKD progression, and has led to major changes to the practice guidelines, which you would expect some changes to occur anyway during the 10 years. It has also created the substance for the last debate to wonder if diabetic drugs belong in the realm of the nephrologist or the cardiologist. So I think that itself sort of tells many of the primary care physicians here that, and I include myself in that you know where the issue has been skewed. Remember, the drug discovery and development is a risky business, but one of the interesting things that has occurred after the CVOT is not the expense to the pharma. That's something that JJ mentioned, and I agree with him that should not be the sole reason. But the number of venture investments that have come into the diabetic drug development, as opposed to, let's say, oncology, has come down by 50% in the last 10 years. That's simply because of an ill-advised mandate only by the FDA. Remember that the EMA did not give a mandate for CV as JJ says, CVOT trials. So clearly, it's important that all these kind of things will impact the future of drug development if we continue to do things that are probably not required at a point of time. They may have been useful when they started, even for the wrong reason. But I think if they have outlived their purpose. Remember, why do we take a drug? We take a drug if it improves survival. If it results in a benefit detected by the patient and decreases the chances of developing a condition that is apparent to the patient. The most important reason why we needed to have done some of these trials is to see if there's a primary endpoint that is a measure of this. As Dr. Mukherjee said, that if we were to, one of the things that happened was that if we were to choose the kind of patients that you and I see in practice and not a cardiologist or a nephrologist, you required a large number of patients to be in the trial. So what did the FDA do? It allowed two things. It allowed an event-driven approach. It asked for a companies sort of a shortcut by which they can actually choose the highest risk patients and then look at how the drug works. And really what it did was it merely fulfilled the regulatory requirement. All the other benefits that we see were side effects of the, or collaterals of those, or the FDA really did not want to look at superiority or any of this in its first or its second evaluation. So the important thing is that it was designed to test a drug versus placebo or standard of care, right? And remember that these were not truly placebo-controlled trials, and that that adjustments were allowed to be. I won't even go into the ethics of these. I think at this point of time, there are lots of discussions whether a placebo-controlled trial should even be allowed. Should there be an active comparator? But the important thing is to understand is, as people who practice diabetology in primary care, are our patients addressed in the CVOT? Do they help us make a better choice? Does it help us serve our patients better? And do we need evidence all the time, or should wisdom supplement the rock star? And the answer is, and I won't take too much of this because this is just a thing, to see that it is very clear that, and I'm just put in the SGLT2 trials, that these patients did not really represent ours. They were sort of pooled, and they were picked so that these trials could be run in a shorter period of time. And that's really very important that there was a jump to run it. We could talk about IGST. I'll come to it in a minute. What we do know is, as the risk increases, the MACE events are better. As the CV burden lessens, the MACE events decline. The question is, are even these benefits truly due to the drug? I concede the possibility that these are. But there have been some very important issues. For example, with the Vertus CV, there is something very important to understand. Post 2015, after the introduction of the newer guidelines for lipid lowering and the PCSK9, you would see that the trials that have come in much later have lost the benefit that the EMPA-REG has. Remember, the placebo rates are pretty much the same in both the EMPA-REG and Vertus CV. So really what is happening is that other treatments are also improving, reducing the benefit. You also notice in the Vertus CV, where there's a higher amount of HFF, there's not greater benefit in terms of heart failure. This is something that we want to understand. And of course, the question that has always become in is a glycemic imbalance. Can this be explained by just the A1C lower? Here is an example of looking at IGST versus the CVOT. And remember that if the A1C reductions were as low in the CVOTs as in the IGSTs, you will find that the hazard ratio actually reduces. That doesn't take away the off targets, but the important thing to remember is that the whole purpose of doing this was not to find out if the anti-diabetic drug was a cardiovascular drug. Instead, to find out if the anti-diabetic drug was cardiovascular safe. We have gone beyond it. We have extended its brief, and what is done is the CV safety issue has become predominant. The benefits are there, but they're not significant enough to make a huge change in the management of the garden variety of patient with type 2 diabetes who does not have cardiovascular illness. And there's no way in primary care that we are going to measure pro-BNP in everybody or do an echo to see if all of them require a drug for heart failure. So you're going to use glycemic lowering, weight loss, and other factors to actually use these drugs in the majority of patients. And this is just to tell you the equipoise effect, and JJ mentioned sustain, and you see that if you look at sustain, which has the maximum amount of A1C reduction when compared to placebo, you will see that the OR was lower, and you can see that there is a nice slope between the odds ratio and the difference in glycemic control. Not that I want to make this a thing. I want to sort of come to the close of this talk by looking at what is really required. What is really required when you come into the market is to have enough safety data for patients to be used. What did the FDA's guidance do, right? Before the FDA approval, remember sitagliptin was done before the 2008 guidance. When a patient came into, when the drug came into the market after the phase 3 patients were 1,538. The number of patients who in the study drug for 12 months were 444. The number of drugs with renal impairment was 65. There were 2 studies in monotherapy. Add-on to metformin was this thing. There was a thiazolidine-dione study and one with moderate to severe renal impairment. On the other hand, after the FDA guidance, 6,600 patients were on the trial in the phase 3s. 4,723 patients had the drug for more than 12 months, 1,800 for more than 18 months. There were 360 patients for the drug while with renal impairment. There was one with monotherapy, one with metformin, one with SU, MF plus SU, MF plus TZD, with insulin, the elderly, moderate to severe renal impairment, and high risk CVD. Really, what should have been the guidance is actually to have the drugs come into the market with greater exposure to patients. If somebody wants to prove that this drug works and provides additional off-target benefits in a bunch of patients with high-risk ASCVD, that's a separate trial. What we really need for a diabetologist, for an endocrinologist, for a physician, for a general practitioner is, one, who do not take care of high-risk CVD is the drug safe? Does it bring down the A1C? Can I use it in the elderly? Can I use it in mild to moderate renal dysfunction? Can I use it as a combination? That's really the mandate, not really to find out off targets. These are some of the suggestions that have come in, and this is again from the this thing, whether to have a longer study, whether to have metformin as first-line therapy, a whole bunch of stuff. But I think the FDA has finally turned around and realized what it needs to do. So the draft guidance talks about withdrawing the 2008, right? And I'll spend some time on it simply because I think the FDA has finally realized that it's time to move on, right? And this is the only document where they have used the word, and of course the 2013 one, where they've used the word CVOTs. In the 2008, they did not even use CVOTs. What they have said is it's done its purpose. They have demonstrated reduced risk for events at a high cost, right? So what they're saying is exactly what we did a few slides ago. Let me go through this again. Originally, before 2008, very low number of patients were exposed when they came to the market. What you really need to do is to expose a larger number of patients to the drug to find out if it is safe, if it meets the A1C requirements, if it brings down the blood pressure. That's really what you really want. That's enough. And then any other benefit can be looked at later. So exactly what people are talking about. One, at least 4,000 patients of patient exposure, right? 4,000 patient years, 1,500 for the first year, 500 for 2 years. That makes you can bring in many drugs, otherwise you're going to stifle drug discovery. As much as we talk about marketing, the most important thing is the money that is needed for drug discovery. It doesn't come from air, it comes from angel investors like JJ who have amassed a lot of wealth, right? At least 500 patients with stage 3/4 chronic kidney disease, which is something that all of us ask for. At least 600 patients. Remember, the number of patients that you need for an event is 600. 600 patients with previous CV disease, right? And 600 patients older than 65 because the population is aging. Recognizing that a given patient could fall in more than one of these categories, they should aim for 1,200 patients with at least one of these conditions. Makes sense, isn't it? It's pragmatism. And remember, they have not used the word CVOT again. Sponsors should also consider that adverse CV outcomes as an important source of morbidity and mortality. JJ spent a lot of time, and very importantly, on the rigorousness of data gathering. I think with rigorous data gathering and pre-specifying what is collected, a lot of those concerns are coming. In some cases, the evaluation of pre-market safety concern may require that the drug development program accrue a minimum number of relevant adverse events to exclude a meaningful degree of risk. Adjudication of these events may also lead. So the agent expects a situation where collection of additional safety data as necessary will be identified and discussed before phase 3 trials are initiated. Sponsors should include data safety monitoring boards or committees to provide independent oversight of clinical trials. I think what has happened is it's not too late to change. Modified, avatar, or no, in the initial iteration, there was no CVOT. We don't need CV outcome trials. We still need overall safety trials. in which CV safety is one of the components that we need to assess. If we only focus on CV outcome, what it does is skew the overall holistic nature of diabetes management to a small group of problems and a small group of individuals who are the only people who are interested in the data. For me, as a primary care physician, as an endocrinologist, as a diabetologist, taking care of patients from a holistic outlook, with or without cardiovascular disease, with or without renal dysfunction, with or without elderly, who are either elderly or not, is as important as just looking at it. So I have to say goodbye to CVOTs and welcome the new pragmatic era of overall patient safety. Data trumps rhetoric. I hope I have not been emotional about this. JJ made a compelling argument, but JJ, it is time to move on. You made some exceptional points, but I think their sell-by date has come. We need to look at the patient as a whole and not just the heart. The heart is an important part, but I think the patient as a whole is even more important. I hope I finished sufficiently ahead of time for us to take questions and if necessary the poll, and of course JJ's rebuttal. Thank you so much.
Yes,
well,
Dr.
we can
Sanjay.
have, yeah, I think both the speakers did a great justice to the topic. It's CVOT is not something which is to be taken without its what benefit it has brought in the past. Dr. JJ, would you like a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yes, sir.
He was preparing. He was taking notes. He was taking notes while Dr. Krishna Seshadri was speaking. I'm sure
okay.
he's going to put his strong foot forward. Dr. JJ, come on.
Okay, thank you. I think Krishna gave a lecture rather than debate. Krishna spoke like a professor rather than debate. He accepted that he got confused between CVOT and cardiovascular safety. Don't get confused, yes. Audience. Safety and outcome is the same. If you read some of the review articles and the papers, they are used interchangeably. We certainly need to know the new molecule, whether it's cardiovascular safe or not. That is the outcome trial. Sustain 6 and Pioneer 6 were phase 3A trials, which were looking at cardiovascular safety, but they are labeled as cardiovascular outcome. So a lot of issues about semantics between cardiovascular outcome and trial and safety. Nobody questions that we need data on the elderly, on the CKD, etc. That's what all the phase 3 trials are designed for. That's not what we are debating, Krishna. We were debating specifically whether we need to continue cardiovascular safety data. And you have agreed not once, but every slide that you showed, everything that you spoke, you agreed that we need cardiovascular safety data. And the new ADA, the new FDA mandate, March 2020, by the way, it's still being debated. A lot of people are still questioning it. They say 4,000 patient years. Where do you think that 4,000 patient years came from? It came from Sustain 6 and Pioneer 6. Classic example of how a CVOT can be done in the pre-registration, pre-acceptance of the molecule as an anti-diabetic agent. Why less patient molecules are coming in diabetes? Not because of the CVOTs, it's because diabetes, the return for a pharmaceutical industry is much less than the return in the oncology field. Generalizability, I told you, we have to design the trials in a pragmatic way, which the Excel trial was, and we need more such trials. So I'm saying we still need cardiovascular outcome, cardiovascular data, which you agreed all throughout. We have to modify, I agree, we have to move on. But what you are thinking is no new molecule will come. Let's not be so pessimistic, Krishna. New drugs are going to come. And we have to, you're thinking DPP4 SGLT is all over, all done, the cloth is dry. No, newer drugs will come. And there we need to know whether they are cardiovascular safe or not. And that is the cardiovascular outcome trial. They're moving it from the post-marketing phase to the pre-marketing phase. And it remains to be seen. You did not show the 3 important points. Exactly what is mandated for CVOT now. That there has to be a data monitoring committee, there has to be adjudication, the data has to be collected carefully, and they still have to discuss with FDA whether pre-marketing is enough or they still need a post-marketing cardiovascular inverted comma safety or outcome trial. There are many other points that I've noted down, but for short of time, I will not go into it. Only thing I will add is you mentioned about Vertis. So this is the importance of doing cardiovascular outcome trial. 4 molecules from the same class have different effects, which as a clinician you should need to know when you want to prescribe an SGLT2. And we all know that heart failure is a class effect now, because the same thing happened in Vertis CV as well. I think I'll stop here. Right? I think he has said what I had to say. I told that he has to say no to CVOT, CV safety, which he didn't. He agreed we need that. And we are going to do it in a modified way. That's what FDA is proposing, which probably some pharmaceutical companies may not agree to, because it will extend the period of time the drug has to be studied, molecules to be studied, before it can just get even marketing permission. With that, I'll stop. Krishna, I'm sure you have a couple of things to say. Please go ahead.
Right. 1 second. Am I okay? Am I audible? Yes.
Yes, you are.
So one thing is, when first thing is, I'm out of debates in the sense that, that's the only reason I agree to this is three things I agree to. One is because of Banshi, the second because of JJ, and the third is because, it's fun. But I don't do emotional debates anymore. The most important thing is that when the protagonist appropriates every sentence that you say as being supportive of him, then it means that there's nothing to, there's no water holding in his or her argument. I think we need to be very clear about this. There's a complete shift from the design of a study to look at cardiovascular outcomes as a primary focus, which is what CV safety is all about, to looking at it holistically to phase 3 trials where you have to have 600 patients who have cardiovascular high risk. Very different in Avatar. You can call it Pioneer 6, you can call it all of these. Yes, these are all taken from the bad experiences and some good experiences from the last 10 years. But it's important to understand that the FDA, which was indeed, remember that no other world regulatory agency asked for cardiovascular safety trials, right? So the important thing to remember is even this agency is now saying it's time to go beyond. So I think it's important to remember that you can call it, yes, modified Avatar. No, there is a shift, and the shift is to say, do a holistic pre-registration trial that includes sufficient number of patients, that looks at cardiovascular safety, renal safety, elderly, all the others. So everything matters, as opposed to the exuberance and the unnecessary rhetoric that has surrounded in the last 10 years that's looked only as the heart as a part of the body. Diabetes affects every cell, folks. And for most of us who are not the big cardiologists in this group, we need the data to be able to take care of the 85% of our patients and know that they are safe, and not just if they have established heart disease or at risk for heart disease. I have no emotions to add to this. Some of the argument was very well done in the debate between Samit and Dr. Sharma, and I think that stands as an epitome why this particular thing must be completely eclipsed and a new normal has to start. Thank you so much.
So I think organizers need to have one more, rather than audience poll, the pharma people should also be included. Whether they want that, what the modified CVOT or whatever you name it, modified CV safety, pre-launch or post-launch. Okay, anyway, there is a questionnaire here, CVOT in diabetes, shall we continue or not? Yes or no? Audience poll. Over to you, Dr. Pratap.
Okay, thank you for very interactive debate by Dr. Kamal Sharma, Dr. Samit, Dr. JJ Mukherjee, Dr. Krishna, and thank you Dr. Samir Dani sir and Dr. Breach Mohan for chairing the session. I think we are concluding here the pre-lunch session on day 2 of Diabicon, and we will meet again at 2 p.m. to start our post-lunch session. Now, before we conclude, a quick question to all of you. don't you think that in CVOTs it should be mandatory to mention about hypoglycemic episodes also? Because it is being linked with cardiovascular events, and there is no mention about, as you put a patient on SGLT2 and standard arm, more requirement of insulin will be there, more requirement of other agents. So probably they will be facing more hypoglycemia as compared to the one on SGLT2 arm, and probably that might be confounding the results cardiovascular outcome trials. Is there any data related to that?
Yes, there are data. They always record the CGMS data or the home monitoring data are always there in all CV outcome trials.
No, Samit, any paper related to that, the hypoglycemia in both the arms and its relation with cardiovascular outcomes? Any
So
paper related to that?
That was only applicable to the DEVOTE trial because
Yes.
the insulin, that was the most important, one of the important factors. For the rest, it was recorded and there was no difference in hypoglycemia in any of the arms.
And Dr. Pratap, DEVOTE trial confused you even more because you had hypoglycemia in the DEVOTE arm and you did not have cardiovascular outcome.
Cardiovascular.
Yes.
So it's a very interesting field, very difficult field.
Yes.
But I could have answered better if you could have.
I don't know how much of this reduction in CVOT and this modification is happening, because once you do a CVOT, you have a risk of losing molecules like SGLT2 to cardiologists. I just wonder how much of that is.
But I thought we did.
That's exactly what I said. That the debate between Dr. Kamal and Samit sort of said that really should have been used as the rebuttal to JJ Mukherjee.
Hey, Krishna, there was no emotion involved. This was a debate. So debate has to be. You spoke so softly. I mean, there was debate, man. Little bit,
No, I had to cut your legs off, so I said emotion.
That was unfair, boss.
Samit, you were adding something. Samit,
in love,
I was saying I could have given a rebuttal, but I'm so hungry. Where's the coupon? Give me the coupon. Let me have my food and then I can.
Ask your wife, boss. She's got the
Coupon is reaching directly. But we will send you a virtual meal also, just like virtual flight. If you ask
in our home, there's no food till the eclipse is over, so I have to sit and wait for the next talk.
So I think we could have kept lunch.
I cannot live without my hillside is being fried now. I'm getting the smells. It's time for me to go.
Okay, guys, have a nice day.
Okay, bye.
See you again at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
So we will again meet at 2 p.m. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Banting.